The political class is at it again. On October 9th, as Hurricane Milton approached Florida, Kamala Harris offered a tax-funded statement from Vice President Kamala Harris warning against price gouging and fraud, which let people enjoy the hypocrisy of a woman who derives her salary from taxpayer cash, telling storm victims that she's standing as a heroine against people being ripped off. But there's more to it than that, including an essential understanding of why the term price gouging is a politically adored weapon used immorally to back unconstitutional edicts and foul up real economic systems that are absolutely essential for people to survive and prosper. Hi everyone, I'm Gardner Goldsmith for MRC-TV. Indeed, Kamala and her genius government gang offered this in part. Quote, "Let us all be clear, Americans impacted by a crisis should never be ripped off." End quote. Yeah, a political parasite used your cash to say that. And she had the unmitigated gall to add, quote, "I have seen firsthand the devastating impact of price gouging during an emergency as Attorney General of California during devastating wildfires that displaced thousands of residents." End quote. Which can inspire a few people to recall that as U.S. Senator, Kamala Harris appeared with California Governor Gavin Newsom in a ghoulish photo op on someone else's property, private property that had been ravaged by a wildfire. Yes, it had seen the home destroyed and actually found the vacationing owners discovering their property loss only by seeing the photo of the opportunistic politicians standing in their yard. Super classy. Oh yeah, Kamala, you can preach to us about the evils of exploiting someone else's hardship, can't you? Well, for his part, Joe Biden made sure to add his tough guy idiocy at a White House appearance, telling reporters that as Hurricane Milton approached Florida.
Additionally, Vice President Harris and I said yesterday, and we'll say it again, to anyone who seeks to take advantage of our fellow Americans' desperation, whether you're a company engaging in price gouging or a citizen trying to scam your neighbors, we will go after you and we will hold you accountable.
Which all sounds very noble and protective, doesn't it? But as Newsbusters' Curtis Houck noted in his post of the Biden statement, quote, "President Biden misleads viewers by saying he and Vice President Kamala Harris are on the lookout for price gouging in Florida, promising federal action. Price gouging in Florida has already been a crime for decades." End quote. Now, Curtis's statement is normative, taking no side on the morality of the statutes or on any benefits or detriments that the statutes might incur. He simply notes that Biden and Harris are posturing and misleading people, and I think that's an important point to bring up in order to counter the Bidenista agenda of appearing to be the paladin of the little guy. The Florida statute is listed as 501.160, which is described by the Florida Attorney General's office as, quote, "Florida Statute 501.160 states that during a state of emergency, it is unlawful to rent, sell, lease, or offer to rent, sell, or lease essential commodities, dwelling units, or self-storage facilities at an unconscionable price." End quote. But in noting Biden's unconstitutional posturing, of course, there's no enumerated power for him to dictate prices anywhere, and in noting his factual error about Florida, people on the side of freedom had to take care to avoid promoting the fallacy that centrally planned anti-gouging statutes are in any way ethical, constitutional, or economically beneficial. Let's start with one of the key terms involved, unconscionable price. Well, who determines that? Will it be the people who willingly want the product and or services, and the people who are willing to sell the products and services? Or will it be the politicians? On a moral level, No one has to go any further than that, because the immoral imposition of that coming from politicians is obvious. It's absurd and it's insulting. But as an economics writer and teacher, I try to stress to students that the practical economic problems are very numerous as well. I wrote about it almost 20 years ago to the day in an essay that later was included in my nonfiction book called Live Free or Die. At that time, Florida Attorney General Charlie Crist wanted to punish people whom the politicians claimed were price gouging. And so, just like one can ask who determines unconscionable prices, one ought to ask just what is so-called price gouging. Well, according to most politicians, price gouging is a sharp upward spike in the price of what said politicians typically call essential products, such as maybe food, water, energy, building supplies, clothing. They're prices that rise above the market norm during a time of emergency. Of course, the term emergency will be defined by the government. But what is the market norm? Simply put, the market norm is determined by those who participate in the market. The market price for a product fluctuates based on the interplay between the wants and needs of each buyer and the wants and needs of each seller. This interplay can change due to various factors, including, but not exclusive to, location, weather conditions, popular notions of style, technological developments, and things like opportunity costs and inflation, i.e., what happens if you don't spend your cash right now. And as a result, what's perceived by people outside the ravaged areas of Florida to be the market price for essential products inside the ravaged areas of Florida is quite different from the perceptions of those living in the devastated areas. Just as the scarcity of pineapples outside Hawaii makes their prices higher compared to pineapples sold in Hawaii, the scarcity of essential goods like food, fuel, clothes, and water inside storm-torn Florida makes their relative value greater to those who seek to buy them. Ethically speaking, it seems the height of conceit for a person outside the market to arbitrarily determine for those participating in it what's best for them, be they buyers or sellers. And just as one wouldn't impose his will regarding the exchanges between buyers and sellers of pineapples in mainland America, even though the prices for pineapples might be higher there than on the Hawaiian Islands, one should apply the same standard to the participants in the market for so-called essential goods in Florida or any other storm zone. And it's not just good ethics, which is the most important thing, to let one's neighbors determine how much they want to spend or accept for products. It's good economics. Prices are essential carriers of information. They not only reflect preferences, but they also reflect the relative scarcity of goods in the market. Without the price mechanism, there can be no systematic determination of the value of a good and no conception of the scarcity of that good. Even the concept of resources itself requires human beings to determine how much they value those things relative to others in order to see that they are more resourceful. If they are resourceful to a person, then that will be reflected by the buyer being willing to spend more on that thing or on that service. High demand will drive up prices, and those higher prices will eventually curtail purchases, preventing complete depletion of the goods. Without the price mechanism, without so-called suspicious price increases for products people want very badly, well, those products quickly would disappear. Just as pineapples kept at artificially low prices on the mainland would disappear, leaving a pineapple shortage in the United States, prices artificially kept under the market level inside storm-ravaged Florida will cause shortages of essential goods like food, water, clothing, fuel, and building supplies. Without so-called price gouging, whatever it means to the politicians, of course, there would be runs on essential materials and shortages would occur. The ironic but natural result of that politically imposed situation is a high-priced black market for essential goods that have been purchased at artificially government-imposed legal prices and resold at even higher prices than those of the gougers before gouging was made illegal. And finally, if politicians can claim that buyers are paying too much, then what happens if politicians decide that sellers are someday at risk and need help? In fact, politicians actually do claim that consumers are paying too little sometimes. Thus, they impose minimum wage mandates and they place tariffs on imports that might actually offer people products at lower prices than the domestically made products that the politicians are favoring. Free trade is supposed to be just that, trade. And on both ends, it's voluntary. Free trade requires freedom to produce price information that regulates the flow of resources. And conservatives can remember these important points anytime there's a disaster that sees shortages. The moral approach is to enter the market, not to order other people around and tell others what they can do in the market. Hey, thanks for watching, everyone. Please like and subscribe. Follow us on Rumble, where they don't censor us. Please share these videos, especially with students interested in ethics and economics. These are some pretty fundamental points on economics, and of course, they're tied to ethics. Find us at MRCTV.org, MRCTV.org, where the whole team can be found. Visit the MRC-TV store. Check us out inside Facebook, on TikTok, on Instagram, and of course, on Twitter/X. And if you want to find me on Gab, I'm at Gardner Goldsmith, and on X, I'm at Gard Goldsmith. Thanks for watching. Please share the videos. For MRC TV, I'm Gardner Goldsmith.